There are any number of reasons you might consider selling your home. To move closer to family, live within a smaller budget, or just wanting a change of scenery. Whatever your reasons, having to figure out all the various housing market trends in your area may not be what you signed up for. That's where an agent who is a realtor comes in. Realtors have the expertise to help you find the right price and navigate the process to sell your home in a way that's right for you. That's who we are. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors.
Start clean with Clorox, because Clorox delivers a powerful clean every time. Because messes happen. Because...
Hey, listen. Remember how you told me to toss those takeout containers before we left for vacation? And you were like, I'm serious. If that leaks over the counter, it'll be a slimy abomination by the time I get back. And I was like, yeah, of course. Don't worry about it. I won't forget. Well...
Ooh, yeah, that happens. So start clean with Clorox. Use Clorox products as directed. Rinse after use if in contact with food surface.
Boy, it sucks. My goodness. I thought I was kind of excited to have a sport coat on, and you.
My job interview all of a sudden.
Your usual podcast.
You have a job interview soon, Wade.
All right, Mark. We
so
ready?
All three of us have been fired at various points, right?
Just you and I are more lately than Wade's experience.
Yeah, we haven't recovered nearly as well.
he always lands on his feet. We're still waiting on us. All right, let's start this. It is another edition of the Doomsday podcast. It is episode 3. Last week was mostly about Ed's demise at ESPN. And
my personal doomsday. Wade, you ever had a personal doomsday like that?
But
quite a few.
We are pleased to be joined by a guy we both know pretty well over the years, Wade Phillips, former Cowboys head coach, former head coach for the Bills, of course, has written a new book, and it is called Son of Bum. Of course, he is the son of the great late Bum Phillips. And Wade, we appreciate you. It's fun to have you back in Dallas, and I know you kept a home here for a while. What's it? Did you finally sell that one, or do you still?
No, I still got it. If anybody wants it,
you want to give an address and a price?
You bet. Come on.
I think Matt and I both like to know why you chose Vic Carucci to write this book, a friend of yours from Buffalo, when Matt and I were both eager and readily available to you.
You know, it never crossed my mind for one
That's
reason.
Nice. We're off to a great start.
Yeah.
What motivated you to do this, even as you were still coaching?
Yeah, you know, of course, when you win a Super Bowl, I really got too much credit probably, but you know, they want you to do something, and they wanted me to write a book, and you know, the NFL films and stuff, they did a great job of covering the team and how we won the Super Bowl and all those things, and you know, it's kind of a labor of love for me. You know, my dad had passed away a few years ago, and I just didn't think there was enough out there about him. And the only reason I was part of this Super Bowl was because of him. So I wanted to kind of dedicate it to him.
And you mentioned the Super Bowl. You're wearing a ring that's the size of, I don't know, a doorstop.
Yeah, it was the biggest one. I'm sure New England's going to come out with one a little bigger this past year. But
I think Robert Kraft's cutting back because he's had to buy more than he expected. And so the next one's not going to be record size as we've typically seen.
I'd be surprised, people, you know.
Well, what was that like for you? I mean, as many years as you've been an assistant coach in the NFL, and this one came at the most unexpected of times because you'd sat out an entire year.
Right. It was special in that way, certainly, you know, because I was out of a job, and luckily Elway and Coop gave me a job there, and really it was the only shot I had, and so they gave me a job, and it was a magical year. I mean, it was, and we said it during the year. We kept saying, "Hey, this doesn't happen all the time." And I'd been in it a long time, and you know, you win 9 games by 7 points or less. You know, we played tremendous defense. That, you know, I've had a lot of great defenses, and you know, this one played tremendously well. So it was a pretty neat time for us.
Where do you think that defense ranks among the 85 Bears and the 2000 Ravens and
I really
Seahawks
think,
defenses?
I really
recently?
think they're right there because because of who we played in the playoffs. You know, when we played Roethlisberger, we played Brady, and then Cam, who was the MVP, and shut all of them down. Had I don't know how many sacks, turnovers, held them all to 14 points a game, which in this day and time was pretty outstanding. They were all averaging over 30 points a game. So I think it ranks right up there with those other teams just because of the caliber of teams that we had to beat to win it all.
How amazing was it, or that experience, and he just officially retired as a Cowboy, and I'm talking about DeMarcus Ware, to have a player like that with the Cowboys. And when you go elsewhere, you just don't, you're like, you don't know if your paths are going to cross. But then for both of you guys to break through like that together, what was that experience like?
It was great for me because I've had a great relationship with DeMarcus for a long time, even after I was gone with the Cowboys, we still kept in touch. I mean, he's been special to me for that whole time. You know, he had 20 sacks with the Cowboys, and then all of a sudden I get to be with him again. So I was excited about it. You know, he had 2 sacks in the Super Bowl. Vaughn had 2, but both his were turnovers. And Malik Jackson took the ball away from DeMarcus, or he had the touchdown. So, I mean, he had a great game. But he had Brady, I think, 8 times in the previous game. Which is, an all-time record probably in one game for any quarterback, but especially Tom Brady. He harassed him the whole game. And the last play of the game was a 2-point play that he made him throw it bad because he was right on top of him. So, I mean,
in the
just
AFC
had a
Championship
tremendous,
game.
yeah, he just had a tremendous career. I was so proud of him and proud for him.
Were you surprised that he retired? There was some hope, I think, that he was going to come back to Dallas and finish. And
yeah,
you were the last guy to talk to him, right? Right before he retired, he met with the Rams.
When he came out,
you're the defensive coordinator
LA.
there now.
Yeah, he came out to L.A. and once you're thinking about retiring, then you probably ought to retire. That's why I don't think about it. Although I'm asked about it a lot.
Speaking of the Rams, I ran into this guy, and I remember the only thing I thought of him when I saw him at the Super Bowl in Houston was that, man, that's a pretty cool haircut. And I literally thought he came up and he was extremely nice, and he at least pretended to sort of know me and said some nice things. And we had a visit, and then about 3 or 4 minutes into it, I realized this is the new Rams head coach. He really is growing up, but
Sean McVay, you're talking
Sean
about.
McVay is certainly it, and thank you for that. I know Coach McVay. I just did in that moment.
I was just doing it for our audience.
Well,
assuming we have one.
I'll let you know if we need to worry about them. But what is that? What is that like? Here is a guy that is quite honestly about 40 years.
Yeah,
younger.
You know what I said, right? I said, we're the only staff that has a defensive coordinator on Medicare and a head coach on daycare. So.
You must have tweeted that.
Yes, I
like
did.
Wade is one of the great follows ever because everything he says is humorous on Twitter.
And that shows you what kind of, because I asked him about if I could do that in the first place. And he said, sure.
You asked permission to use a line like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, he's my head coach now. I don't want to start out.
You're the guy with the Super Bowl ring.
Yeah, but
what are you worried about?
No, I tell you, he's a dynamo now. He's terrific. He's really got a purpose. He knows he's trying to change the culture quickly, and he knows how to do it. So I don't say he's a good young head coach. I say he's a good coach.
Regardless of age.
Yes.
What's
and
your?
We don't want to talk about age anyway. So.
How tough is that division that you're in from a defensive point of view? It seems like a very defensive-oriented division, the NFC West.
Yeah, overall, certainly. Arizona's really strong on defense. And, of course, we know about Seattle. They've had some great defenses. So, we'd like to get there to compete kind of with those guys.
Did you have any thought of, anybody that's at least, had a long, nice career like you would think about maybe going out on top? We won the Super Bowl. Would this be a good time to
go
walk
out
away?
like Elway did?
Like Elway carried
Elway
off.
won 2 in a row.
I think they did.
One.
Didn't they carry you? I mean, I think they picked you up.
No, they couldn't pick me up. They weren't that good. They were strong, but they weren't that strong.
They weren't that. Did they ever cross your mind like, hey, this would be a good time, or you just love it too much and you feel like?
No, it's just like I said. I think if you're thinking about that, you probably should.
Yeah,
you should go. I mean, I feel like I can contribute, and I enjoy what I'm doing. I mean, I just, I'm not a golfer. I'm not a hunter or a fisherman or any of that stuff. So, and Laurie, that 1 year, man, she said, you need to get out of the house. So, and 1 year I was out. So you better get a job. So that's what I'm doing.
How long do you expect to coach in the NFL?
I don't know. My agent says 10 more years, but I don't know. I think as long as I feel good and like I say, as long as I can feel like I can contribute, this is a challenge. I mean, this is a team that won 4 games, so it's going to be a challenge for us. But I'm looking forward to that. I think that keeps you young a little bit right there.
How often do you wear the Super Bowl ring, and what goes through your mind? Do you think about your dad every time you put it on? I mean, he was so close so many times.
Yeah, I think about him certainly, but I think about just this ties us to that team forever. I had a real great relationship with the players there too, which I feel like I have in a lot of places I've been. But when you win it all, you're tied together forever. So that's a pretty neat feeling.
Did you, speaking of your dad, in writing this, did you have extensive notes over the years or anything you could go back over? Did you find yourself looking through old photos? How did you jog your memory? I mean, I'm sure in putting all this together, you needed to go back over some things. What was that experience like?
Yeah, I didn't write it all down, certainly. I kept a lot of speeches that he had, and I looked over those from years past. Most of the things that came up I'd thought about or talked about for a long time, because there's stories about him that I'd repeated a bunch of times. And there probably were a few more stories about him, but some of the other people in it, obviously, Buddy Ryan, I could almost write a book about him.
Is that next?
But I think I'm going to let Robert Rex write that one. But and of course Jerry Jones, we can go on.
So you might write a book about Jerry Jones.
No, well, you can't.
I think there's a couple of chapters.
What is your favorite story about your dad?
Well, my favorite one is the year that the strength and conditioning guys said, "Hey, for the test this year, instead of running 40s, for 40-yard dashes, we're going to have the players run a mile." I mean, Earl Campbell wasn't a miler, So he makes about half a mile and steps off the track, and he's got cramps and those huge legs of his. And of course the media, like always, they ran up to my dad, and they said, "Hey, Bum, what are you going to do? Earl Campbell didn't make the mile." He said, "Well, hell, if it's third and a mile, we won't give it to him. But the rest of the time, we're going to give it to him." And we did.
You and your dad will always be associated with that guy because he's the
Right.
most famous, maybe the most famous, you could argue, the greatest player to ever come out of not only the University of Texas, but the state of Texas.
Yeah, he's still close. And I did see him in Houston and at the Super Bowl. But in the book there, I told how we drafted him, which I think was it's a longer story, but how we drafted him was pretty neat too, because we didn't have the number 1 pick, and so we traded for it. And so it's in the book there. I think it's pretty interesting how it happened. And it was pretty exciting at the time for sure, because all of a sudden we're getting Earl Campbell, which we had like the 12th pick or something like that, and then all of a sudden we traded up and we got Earl Campbell.
When you reflect on the time you were here as a Dallas head coach, what comes to mind for you? It was a great opportunity, coaching wise, to be the head coach of the spotlight team in the the National Football League. I mean, it was a great honor, to be picked. I wish we'd have won it all. We didn't. But I've been a head coach, counting interim 6 times, and I've been fired 6 times. So I knew, sooner or later it could happen. You knew how it might end?
Yeah.
I've been fired recently. I don't know if you know.
I heard that.
Yeah, did you? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Ed, we've already done that episode. I don't know if we need to. Let's
Went
focus.
so well, just in case the book sales aren't quite what we expect. I thought I'd throw that in
Let's
there.
focus on Wade for now. I'm trying to think back. I covered, it was my first story for ESPN.com, writing about you being named the new head coach. It was between, as I recall, you and Norv Turner. Norv having been so close to Jerry and the Cowboys, some of us thought, well, he's going to have the inside. What do you remember about that, and who do you think was?
It was a long interview. I mean, he brought me back twice, I believe, and I mean, we talked about so many things, and then he interviewed several people, so I was kind of on edge. Like I say, it was a great job. So, and then he finally gave me the call and said, "Hey, I want you to be the coach." So, yeah, that was a great. That was an exciting time for me. And then, we win 13 games the first year, but we lose to the Giants, who win the Super Bowl. And I think that was the big key. If we could have won that game, I think, a lot of things could have changed. But there's a lot of ifs. But I don't look back. You create your own future. That's what I look forward to, and that's the way my dad was. He didn't, even though we had the great Oiler teams. We talked about it sometimes, and he'd say, I'm more worried about this tractor and make sure it works today, and these cattle out here, and those kind of things. So I'm a little bit like him in that way. I think I'm worried about how the Rams are going to do this year.
What was it like to be Jerry Jones's head coach? Different than the other 5?
Yeah, and that he was a general manager. And a lot of people say, well, that's bad. But actually, I think having a general manager, it's hard to get to the owner. It's hard if you want to do something that the owner has to, will let you do. You don't get to talk to him. You got to go through the general manager to be able to do that. So, and Jerry's a good listener. People don't realize that. I don't think they do, but he's a good listener. I mean, and if he wants to do it, I mean, he'll do it, and you get it done. So. And if he didn't want to do it, he obviously tell you. So, I mean, you didn't have any worries as to whether the owner would okay anything or whether you could get to the owner to be able to okay things. And same thing with the draft. I mean, he'd listen to you about players, and he had people that were picking the players. But if you talk to him about a certain guy you really liked, well, he'd consider it. He
created, and you talk about this in the book. I mean, I know you're saying you don't want to look back, but that's what we're here to do, to help you with. He created an awkward situation because, as we all recall, Jason was going through a coaching search, and Atlanta looked at him. Baltimore looked at him. I think Baltimore might have offered him the job. And with what Jerry did to match his salary, which was somewhere in the neighborhood of $3 million, something probably you had never been accustomed to or ever been a part of. It created a situation where he made it at least as much or maybe a little more than the head coach. I mean, it seemed like you and Jason, for the most part, seemed to do pretty well together, but it had to make things at times a little awkward because it almost created this like, hey, he's in charge of this side of the team. You're in charge of this side of the team. What was that like? No, I mean, and I talked to my dad about that, and he told me, what I knew he was going to tell me anyways. Hey, things that you can't do anything about. The owner can do what he wants to do, and you can't worry about that stuff. And I did at first, certainly, but I just say, hey, you got to do the best job you can do. We got fired in Houston when we lost the AFC Championship twice to Pittsburgh, and they won the Super Bowl. We lost to Oakland. They won the Super Bowl, and we got fired. And then after that, he said to me, and I thought from then on, hey, you just got to try to do the best you can do, whatever it is. And if you get fired, you're just like one of those coaches that's going to be fired. There's two things going to happen. You're either going to get fired or they're going to keep you for a while and then fire you.
So you don't think that undermined your authority as a head coach?
No, I don't. It didn't bother me at all. Once I got through it, and then obviously he made the best decision. He kept Jason. Now Jason's the head coach and done a great job, and has done a better job than I did. So, I said when I went to Denver, I was a lousy head coach, but I'm a pretty good defensive coordinator. So
why do you say that? Why do you say?
Well, I mean, because I think that's my niche. That's what I do the best. I think
is coach defense.
Yeah,
and you think you're one of the great defensive coordinators of all time, right?
Well, I don't think that, but some people say that.
and you don't argue too much about that.
No, I'm not. No, I've had a good run as a defensive coordinator for sure.
Are you surprised that Tony Romo's retired, or so it appears, without ever winning a Super Bowl?
To a certain extent, because Tony, his record, I think, the winning percentage at the games he started has to be really high, and so you'd think that would have
maybe made a difference if he'd had a healthier career.
Yeah, a healthier career overall, because I think the number of wins he had, beating Aikman's records and Staubach's records. I mean, he had a great career, but not everybody wins the Super Bowl. We found that out.
Yeah, although you did eventually break through. Do you think Tony is going to, I mean, you talk about a tough leap. I don't think it's ever been done to go straight from playing to the number one analyst job at CBS. You've been around him quite a bit. Do you think, I know you're not a media critic, but you've been around a lot of folks in the media. You've even liked a few of us.
Some here.
You've even what?
I said liked a few of us.
Oh, liked.
Yeah. Do you think that he's going to be good at this?
I assume he will. I mean, all the rest of the ex-Cowboys have done pretty well. So he's a smart guy. You know him. I mean, he's a smart guy. I think he comes across well. And being an ex-Cowboy is, I think, a good thing in this business these days.
A lot of value in that. Creates a lot of opportunity.
Right. Yeah, it sure does.
What do you think is the biggest challenge for a former player going to a high-profile job like that in the media?
Well, you never know how they're going to come across to the public for sure. I mean, as a football player, the way they play, that's whether you like them or not. But there's obviously some skill involved in the media, and if they don't do good, they get fired. So,
or do podcasts,
or podcasts, whatever. I really seriously, I think it's not as easy a job as everybody thinks.
Right.
So it'd be interesting to see how he does with it.
Do you have any? I mean, you've been without a job before. Do you have any advice for Ed for things to do? I mean, you said you.
I thought we did that last week.
Any thoughts on what the Cowboys did in the draft? Obviously, they leaned heavily on trying to rebuild their defense with their early picks all being committed to the cornerback.
Well, if they picked the ones like they picked last year, they'll be in good shape. Those guys come through on defense like they did on offense. That's pretty amazing that they had the quarterback and the running back. I mean, it really, really came through for them. So they're looking pretty strong for a good while because of their offensive prowess and they've got a great defensive coordinator. They've got really good coaches there too. I believe that. I do think it helps to have good assistant coaches.
Son of Bum, Wade Phillips, along with Vic Carucci. Vic, I think, took notes or recorded some things along the way. But no, Vic's a good friend of ours. I don't want Vic to hear this and think I do like Vic a lot. And so you knew him from your time in Buffalo. Wade, tell us exactly. We're here at Barnes & Noble at the Lincoln Center in Dallas, across from North Park, as we tape this for a big book signing you're going to do. Are you going to do any reading? You're just going to sign books? You're going to do? I'd like to hear a Wade Phillips dramatic reading. Are you going to do any of that, or you think you'll just sign?
No. It's in fact, we did the book, the Audible, the book, and I think I read some of it, and they kicked me out. So.
Have you enjoyed the process of promoting a book?
It's fine. I mean, it's
so no.
Well, I mean, football is my niche, but
you're engaging with people.
Yeah, I have fun being around the people. In Denver, I mean, they love me in Denver. I'm waiting to see what happens in Dallas. And Houston, I think.
And we know you've sold at least 2 books tonight because Mosley
I know it. I appreciate
whipped
that.
out apparently the Doomsday podcast has a credit card account, and he's bought a couple of books, and you're going to sign those for us.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see what that may say.
I think technically I put these on layaway. I don't know. I need to still go by and make the official purchase. But now, where are all the different various places folks can go? Amazon, I'm sure.
Amazon Prime. Most of the bookstores, if they don't have it, ask for it, So, yeah, Barnes & Noble for sure.
Yes. And can they just tweet you? By the way, that is an interesting – you embraced Twitter, and you've had fun with it. And what's funny about that is we sort of have gotten to know you a little bit, so we know you have you didn't wear the cowboy hat like your dad. You all are different. But you do have his sense of humor, and maybe at times even funnier or as funny as your dad. Who got you to embrace Twitter? Or did you just decide, I kind of need to do this? Because you've really kind of jumped in and it's funny.
Yeah, I first noticed it when I was with the Cowboys and I was a head coach. And I thought, well, you can kind of throw things out to the fans, you know, not inside, but kind of inside, and plus, you know, hey, we caged the Lions this week. You know, I mean, they like that. So I started doing it when I was the Cowboys, and it's just kind of carried on.
What's your best tweet ever?
I don't know.
So many to consider.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, Carolina didn't like it, but you know, a little dab will do you, but too much dab will undo you. You know, so
I would agree. That's good. That's off the Super Bowl win, right? So Matt mentioned your dad had this great sense of humor, which football fans should know. As do you. What was it like around, like when you worked together or when you were growing up? Was there a lot of verbal sparring between the two of you?
Well, I mean, he would say funny things, you know, during the ball games and things when I was coaching with him, you know, and things would come up that, you know, one time we were receiving the kickoff in one of the first games, and I was standing beside him, and I said, you know, I wanted to know which way the return was, you know, and I said, which way are we going? And he said, well, hell, they're kicking at us, and we're running that way. So,
you know, just return left or return right?
Yeah, but, you know, so.
Did you call him Dad, or like what did you say in front of when you were coaching with him?
When I was coaching with him, if it was a father-son thing, I called him Dad. Most of the time, the other times as a coach, I just called him Bum because he wanted everybody to call him Bum. And I've carried that on. Most of my players call me Wade or Coach Wade. I like to be called Coach Wade because I think coach means something. You know, I think it's respectful. Because I get kidded because, you know, they'll say, hey, coach, you know, well, there's a lot of coaches. And so I say, hey, player, you know, so finally they got it where they call me Coach Wade, and then I call them by their name.
Bill Parcells did that once. He called T.O. the player and didn't go over real well with T.O.
Yeah.
You know, that's funny you brought that up, though, in the book. And Wade's been quoted recently talking about that. You spoke very highly of T.O., and I think T.O.'s taken, and I've been one of them. I don't really care for T.O., and that may not be fair to him. I didn't have great experiences with him, but that's a lot of players could say that about me. And
coaches,
and at least one owner.
But you did. You thought he did right by you, and
well,
you had some good things to say about him.
I mean, when I got fired, and he was already gone, you know, I got fired, and he texted me and said, "Don't worry about it. You're a good coach. You're a really good coach," you know, and. Not a lot of players do that, you know, and I appreciate that. That's what I wanted people to know about him is at least, you know, he at least cared about somebody and said it to me, and I appreciated that. And the other thing about him is he worked hard. He practiced hard. You saw him do sit-ups and all that stuff, but he practiced hard. I really believe players that work hard and practice have a redeeming value, you know. Now, some of the other stuff, obviously, you know, people don't agree with, and I didn't agree with either that he did or whatever. But he worked hard and played as hard as he could for the team, for himself or for the team, whatever. And I think there's some value in that.
Well, we appreciate you being a part of the Doomsday podcast.
I hope it's not my doomsday now.
I think you're all right.
Okay, good. Good.
You've overcome poor quarterback play before.
Oh, wow.
What was that a shot at? Jared Goff or what?
No. I mean, we could cut that out.
Yeah, there you go.
He did. He overcame. I mean, that was unbelievable what he did at Denver. They did not exactly have great quarterback play. So what he's about to do with the Rams. But again, thank you to Wade Phillips.
What an entertaining guy, a highly successful coach, Super Bowl winning defensive coordinator, and really one of the greats of the game in that regard, I think. It's fair to say. Would you now agree with that? You wouldn't argue.
I'm not going to argue with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a better ending. There it is.
Thank you.
Leave that in there. Why did you say that, man? It is the Doomsday podcast, and we were fortunate to have Wade Phillips on with us. And Ed, I thought Wade was he's funny, he's relaxed now, and I think something about maybe winning a Super Bowl can make you more relaxed, and so that was a good time. One thing we haven't really had a chance to talk about as we get into our third episode here, Ed, we've made it into a third episode. I hope you're
against all odds.
Yes, that's right. I hope we could continue. I don't.
We haven't lost a single advertiser in 3 episodes. Well, of course, we didn't have any to start with, but it's beside the point.
They're knocking at the door. I will say,
I'm just waiting for you to sign some deals.
People are reaching out to us.
I'm ready to make a deposit.
We're very happy about that.
What kind of businessman are you?
You know what? That's not a great one.
You did not tell me we were doing this pro bono.
As far as I know, what's that thing called that I'm now doing with you? What's the site called when I dump money into your account? What's that
PayPal.
called? PayPal.
Yeah.
I am going to PayPal you. I'm going to continue to do that.
Continue. You've done it once.
Buddy, the second one is on its way. I just
didn't know it was such a long
the
process.
proverbial checks in the mail. Now, one thing we didn't get to talk about is the NFC East, the rest of the NFC East. We looked at the Cowboys' first 3 rounds and talked a lot about that. In the coming weeks, I think we ought to meet some of these folks. Maybe have Taco Charlton and some of the other guys that they were able to pick. The Cheeto Awuzie comes to mind. We talked to his college coach, Mike McIntyre, last week. But the rest of the NFC East, Ed, let's go around the NFC East really quickly. The Philadelphia Eagles end up going with Derek Barnett. And I thought it was interesting that not only the Cowboys went with defensive end help or pressure player, but 2 of the other 3 NFC East teams did the exact same thing. And that's what the Eagles did. And the player out of Tennessee, Derek Barnett, is, he comes highly recommended, and I thought it was interesting. One of their former first-round picks, I believe his name's Marcus Smith, in the days after the draft, they said, hey, we're not going to exercise, I believe it's his 5th-year option. So I do think it's interesting that I think the entire NFL is probably sitting there like, we've got to get pressure players, and you saw that quite a bit in the NFC East.
And we saw Dallas make that same attempt with their first-round pick, Taco Charlton. And I think a lot of, they're talking about playing him at right end, which is the pass rush position in the league in a 4-3. And most people I've talked to, and I think the same for you, is see him as a classic 4-3 left end, which is more the run defense position. The Cowboys obviously not productive at all out of that right defensive end position last year from a pass rush point of view. You're right about Barnett. He's Tennessee player. He's an edge rusher. Kind of people saw him going about where he did with the Eagles, sort of in the middle of the first round. I think New Orleans was kind of a high-end team for him at 11. Obviously, the Saints felt, I was supposed to cover them. I didn't, but I did my research. And they felt, and accurately so, that there was going to be a better corner at their spot, and there was in Marshawn Lattimore from Ohio State, than there would be a pass rusher. So I think that tells you a little bit about Barnett from Tennessee. But he is a guy who can stand up and rush off the edge. Clearly, teams know that if they're going to contend with Dallas, they're going to have to, be strong defensively, and you have to create a pass rush. And I think that's what the Eagles were looking to do. And I thought the fascinating move for them was their second-round pick. They went for the Washington corner who, in his pro day, has to run one more time, blew out his Achilles tendon, is Sidney Jones. And they drafted him in the second round, even though I know, talking to people there, they're not sure he's going to play this year. So this is not unlike what the Cowboys did last year with Jalen Smith, the linebacker from Notre Dame that they took in the second round.
Yes. Yeah, that was the best drop foot available strategy that the Cowboys undertook on that situation. He is making, at some point, Ed, we need to hear from the actual doctors. I don't think they're allowed to come on with us, but boy, wouldn't that be fascinating if we could get, you and I happen to be longtime friends with Drew Dossett, Dr. Cooper.
You go to the Cooper Center, don't you?
That's not the same Dr.
Okay.
Cooper. Yeah, it's a different one. But we know these people, and I wish they were able to. Drew Dossett doesn't care. I bet he'd jump on with us, but I want to actually hear from a doctor instead of the Jones boys.
You don't trust
Jalen
Dr.
Smith
Jerry?
Thing. No.
So
no,
I think
not at
my
all.
understanding is these doctors are now forced to sign a non-disclosure agreement to be Cowboys physicians and paid to be that.
Could that
so
hurt us?
I don't think they're allowed to interact with the media, even off the record, is my understanding. So I don't know that we're ever going to hear from Dr. Cooper, who performed the surgery on Jalen Smith. You're right. Everybody says there's been some improvement, that he does have sensation in some of his toes, but the reality is he does still have to wear that AFO brace, and unless there's really significant dramatic improvement over a short period of time, they're definitely looking at him having to learn how to play with that brace. And I think there's all kinds of doubt about whether he can succeed or at least be the player he was projected to be before the injury, if that indeed is the case.
Yeah, but a very interesting point what you said with the Sidney Jones draft pick and the fact that the Cowboys have been known to, some of these guys, think about it, it's not just Sean Lee, who was coming off a major knee injury when they drafted him in the second round. That's the reason they got him in the second round. They did it with Bruce Carter. He had a knee injury. He started the season, I believe, on the PUP list. DeMarco Murray, even, when he came out, had a little bit of, he was nicked up and didn't get going for a little while his rookie season. So the Cowboys, and they got him in the third round. So maybe, I don't know, if I was another team, that's not what I would follow from the Cowboys. I might follow getting some great offensive linemen. I think that's a good thing to follow. I don't think taking a chance on players with medical baggage would be something, or marijuana baggage, I think would be some things I would stay away from.
Well, I think the medical thing indicates not only do they trust the opinion of their physician and their surgeon in Dr. Cooper, who performed the operation on Jalen Smith, but it also indicates, as you mentioned, their history with this suggests that their training staff with Britt Brown and Jim Maurer have been able to help some of these players overcome their injury history and get healthy and get back on the field and be productive players.
Now, those are people I like, by the way, those ones you just mentioned, athletic trainers. You talk about some of the underrated guys that help with a rehab. The doctors sometimes get all the attention, and they rightly so. They do the surgeries, but the guys that are out there at ridiculous hours, putting them on resistance cords and doing all that, I'd like to try that, by the way. I'd like to try a workout with some of those resistance cords.
I'd say you should try that.
Thanks. I thought
you were talking about your golf shirt.
I thought everything was. I was. It was fitting me a little snugly the other day, if that's a word. Jonathan Allen is who the Redskins end up taking, and boy, I thought that might have been the steal of the first round because Jonathan Allen. Now, I say that part of this is we get sort of intoxicated with these mock drafts. And so what happens is in our minds, well, Jonathan Allen was a potential top 5 draft pick, or he was at least supposed to go in the top 7, and then he's still there, and then he's right there for Washington to pick. Now, I don't know exactly why he fell. Maybe, all these mock drafters that we follow, and some of them are our good friends. They're not quite as tied in as we might think at times. But part of it is, hey, there's a lot of misinformation out there. Teams are throwing all kinds of stuff out. I think Jonathan Allen, I think when you start evaluating this draft, a lot of people look at that pick and go, one of the better values in the first round.
Well, I think the thing with Jonathan Allen that maybe affected his value in the first round is that, that's kind of where you're looking for the most part for an edge rusher. And Jonathan Allen is really projected to be a guy who's going to be more of an inside presence. And so I think that may have driven down his value some.
Yeah, I think they're hoping he could be more versatile than that, but I know what you're saying. What I think they'd love for him to be is who was the longtime inside player for the 49ers, Justin Smith, who ended up getting a lot of sacks at that. I think they're thinking if he could be sort of in that mold. And that's
play outside and inside.
Correct. And that's a player.
And Justin Smith was not immediately successful either with the Bengals. He had later success, obviously, with the 49ers.
Even into his 30s.
Right.
Yeah, even into his 30s had some success there. The Giants go with a tight end. And I found this fascinating. I covered you've covered all these teams. I sort of was mainly hanging around the NFC East for a few years, and so I got to know Jerry Reese, the GM there, and I like Jerry a whole lot. I will say this. They really haven't had a dynamic playmaking tight end since Jeremy Shockey. So you got to go back and Jeremy Shockey didn't play in that first Super Bowl they won, if people will recall, because he was hurt. He had some form of injury. And had to sit that one out. And then his career ended not too long after that. Interesting move by them because Ingram, the player out of Ole Miss, he's not your Jason Witten do it all. I don't think I don't know if maybe he can improve as a blocker. That's not what he's going to be. He's going to be kind of line him up everywhere, line him up in the slot, and hopefully be
outside.
A matchup problem for teams.
And if you look at the receiving core that they've got with, Odell Beckham Jr. and Brandon Marshall and the Sterling Shepard kid that they drafted last year, they're gonna create some matchup problems. And the tight end position is really somewhere a position where they didn't get a lot of productivity last year. And I think they're trying to find a way to get Eli Manning, who's been playing behind a pretty bad offensive line and under duress quite a bit of the time without a run game, give him some easy throws to a dynamic player who's really a big receiver. And that's essential in the Green Bay offense that the Giants now run. The Packers haven't had great tight ends either, but one of the things I know in talking to Mike McCarthy, who's the head coach there, is that you really want to be able to control the middle of the field, and the tight end and the slot receiver are the two guys that let you do that. And the slot receiver they have is Sterling Shepard, who had a very strong rookie season. And then you've got the two outside threats. So I think the Giants are going to be very tough to stop in the passing game. Whether they can run the football at all remains to be determined.
Yeah, I think you're right, and isn't that strange that a team that both with the pass rush and then Brandon Jacobs and Ahmad Bradshaw, I remember you covered in that first Super Bowl, I believe, with Tom Coughlin out there. Was that in Arizona? Were we out there
when they beat the Patriots, who were going for the perfect season?
But that was a team built on a strong running game, and quite honestly, even though they went back and won another Super Bowl, it's sort of been a while for them since they've had a big-time running back. Boy, I thought that was interesting. Davis Webb, they go ahead in the fourth round. Was it the fourth round? We'll come back and dub that if I'm wrong on that. They draft a quarterback, and, Eli, you have to think about his future. Tony takes off at age, I think he's just turned
37,
30.
right?
Yeah, I think he was coming up on 38, perhaps, in this latest birthday that could be happening. I think it just happened.
I may not have gone to that celebration.
Yeah, I've been left out of some of those lately.
If he's 38, I've missed 38.
I think I was at number 30.
Really?
No, I was at number 28. He was dating Carrie Underwood, and she was there.
I met Carrie Underwood.
She's
he introduced me to her, and as we walked away at the stadium, I said, "Hey, that was nice of you." And he said, "What?" I said, "Introducing me to Carrie Underwood." He goes, "Yeah, I guess it was."
Yeah,
that's Robo for you.
That's also about the time. That was at Detroit game, and that was before the Detroit game. She was down there on the field, and Parcells. I don't know if I ever told you this, or maybe you knew this, but Parcells got wind of it, that she was kind of down there hanging out with him a couple hours before the game. It wasn't like right up against kickoff, but Bill. After that game, Bill went to David Lee, who was the Cowboys former quarterbacks coach, but at that point, Chris Palmer was the actual quarterbacks coach. David Lee was still on staff, and I think it was, as I remember, Bill Parcells went to him and said, "Fix this kid. What is wrong with him? His fundamentals were breaking down." And David Lee said something along the lines of, "Well, Palmer doesn't want me in there. Chris Palmer's the quarterback's coach. I can't do anything." And I think that's what Bill said. To hell with Palmer. Get in there and fix this kid. Oh man. And that would have been before the infamous Seattle game, or the botched. That would have been kind of toward the end of that season, the 2006. So Parcells' last season as head coach of the Cowboys.
This rambling thought began with something about Eli Manning and the fact that they drafted a quarterback in the fourth round.
Rambling Thought should have been the name of this podcast. And that's all we have for you on the third edition.
I'd like to read the inscription, because I really
just
honestly...
because you feel like yours was a little better than mine?
No, quite honestly, I didn't know what Wade would write.
Wade Phillips.
Wade Phillips, former... I was not his biggest advocate when he was here.
Yeah.
I didn't... And amazingly,
you weren't mean to him.
I wasn't mean to him. I thought I judged him fairly, and obviously he does too, because not only because of what he wrote in his book, but he basically agreed in our conversation with my point, which is he's a great defensive coordinator, but he's not demanding enough to be a successful head coach, and we actually got him to make that admission. So I actually didn't know what he would write in the book, and so I didn't buy the book until after he wrote, because if he wrote something nasty, I would just put it back on the shelf. I'm not going to pay whatever this cost, $20 or
what
whatever.
Did he say to you?
To have him insult me. So he said, Ed, you have been a great, and great is underlined, friend. Wade. So very nice of Wade Phillips.
All right. To me.
What did he say to you?
To Matt, you guys are the best.
You
Wade,
guys?
I don't know.
I guess he meant me.
I think,
so he's referencing me in your book.
That might be my family. I don't know.
I think he's referencing me. I guess he could be talking about Parker.
I think that's the Mosley family. Yeah. I don't know if Parker was born when he was still the head coach. But by the way, this book, it's the price on the dust jacket here is that what they call that? $25.99.
Wow.
Ooh, that's a little more than I was wanting to pay.
Yeah, if you go to Canada, up to Canada, it's going to cost you $33.99. So good decision to buy it here.
Yeah. But you know what? We're going to get a great deal here at Barnes & Noble. And by the way, thanks to everybody at Barnes & Noble. Now, let me remind everybody, I want you to subscribe to this podcast. I think that's helpful to do that. I want you to leave a review. That, for some reason, is helpful to us as well.
Tell them how to do that.
Well, they just leave it, like where they go listen to it. They can, like on iTunes or wherever, they can leave a review, and it's very self-explanatory.
They can email us.
If you say something mean about us, my buddies will send it to me, which I thought was strange. One of my buddies sent me. He's like, "Could you believe this guy said this about y'all?" And I'm like, "Why? Why are you sending me this?" So there have been mostly positive comments, some negative, and that's fine. I don't want this to be, I want us to make people have some kind of reaction, even if it's negative. But Stitcher, Google Play now is also available. iTunes,
iHeartRadio.
Well, Ed, let's not get ahead of ourselves. But yes, I think they're going to be getting involved as well.
What do you mean get ahead of ourselves? I got an email that said we were on iHeartRadio.
Ed, we'll be talking about this later. Thank you for being a part of this, everyone. Good night.
All shut down, and it's hard to find a friend inside this godforsaken town. That emptiness, it feels from your head down to your toes. I'm sorry, baby, that's just the way it goes.
There are any number of reasons you might consider selling your home. To move closer to family, live within a smaller budget, or just wanting a change of scenery. Whatever your reasons, having to figure out all the various housing market trends in your area may not be what you signed up for. That's where an agent who is a realtor comes in. Realtors have the expertise to help you find the right price and navigate the process to sell your home in a way that's right for you. That's who we are. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors.
Hey, it's Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, Record Store Day founder Carrie Colleton is joining us to discuss the April 20th RSD special releases.
Plus, we'll talk live with our audience, the Sound Up Pod Squad, and find out who still listens to vinyl. And some updates from the Beatles universe.
Oh, good. Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.